Hello. Hi, Fran. Hi, Julie. Welcome to class. Jacqueline, welcome to class. So happy to see you. How was everybody's Yom Kippur? Yes, Fran, you were actually first. You win a Sukkot meal. Would you like to come on Sukkot? Hi, Shira. I'm going to close the music. Hi, Jackie. So Shira lives in Sedona, and it's Cindy's. I'm going to wait till I start. I'm going to say what it is for Cindy. It's actually her birthday. I just can't control myself. Hi, Barbara. When is Sukkot? I'm going to tell you. It's coming up Friday night. Cindy, you're so funny. Oh, you are so funny. Wow, yeah. A lot of people had Yom Kippur by themselves. Hello, Rivka. And Barbara. Wow. So Sukkot starts this Friday night, and that's what we're gonna be talking about today or tonight. It's the season of our rejoicing. Hi, Elaine. How are you? So I'm actually going to begin rewarding those who come on time, and there is a lot to talk about today. Hi, Adrian. So I want to dedicate the class, first of all, to the complete healing of Leah Hannah Bas Miriam. I want to also dedicate the class for tremendous blessings of revealed good for my dear friend Cindy, also known as Cinderella, or Grandma Cindy in our family. Today is her birthday. And I know that she's blessing everybody with revealed good and just an abundance of joy, because this is the season of our rejoicing. And I'd also like to dedicate the class tonight to Rebbetzin Miriam Levinger. And I'd like to speak about Rebbetzin Levinger for a few minutes. So Miriam Levinger and her husband, Moshe, were pioneers, and she was a heroine. She was a heroine of Israel. She came to Israel from the United States when she was 18 years old, and she was among the many high kind of blessings for everybody. And she was among the families that opened up the holy city of Hebron for everyone to be able to pray and to live there. And I just want to say that my grandson Ari Schwartz, who is a paratrooper in the Israeli army, spent his Yom Kippur protecting Hebron. He was in Hebron for Yom Kippur, and it was actually the day, I think, that Rebbetzin Levinger passed away, and she was buried the next day in the cemetery in Hebron. So for whoever does not know, Hebron was always a Jewish city. It's the place where our mamas and papas are buried. Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and Sarah, Rivka, and Leah. It's also the place where Adam and Eve are buried. And it's also the place where souls, when they leave this world, enter Gan Eden, enter the holy heavens through Hebron. So Hebron always had a Jewish presence until 1929, when there was a massacre of 67 Jews were killed. Many were injured, and the British actually took all the Jews out of Hebron, and there wasn't a Jewish population that was allowed back into Hebron until the 1967 war, when we regained our holy city back. Now, Miriam Levinger along with Sarah Nakshan, who is a dear friend of mine, and may her husband, Baruch ben Leah, have a complete healing, along with 5 other families. I don't know the families. Went in 1968 on Passover. They went into Hebron, the first time Jews were back in Hebron since 1929, and they went into the Park Hotel, where each family had 1 room, and they went there to celebrate the Passover holiday, and they ended up staying there for 3 years. Each family 1 room, bathrooms and kitchen, 1 bathroom and 1 kitchen outside. And they stayed there until the Israeli government agreed to build the city of Kiryat Arba. They didn't yet agree to let Jews live in Hebron, but they did agree to build the city of Kiryat Arba, which is about a 10-minute walk from downtown Hebron. Then in 1979, there were a group of courageous women led by Miriam Levinger, who went into what was called Beit Hadassah. So I'm sure everybody here has heard of Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. So the first Hadassah Hospital was in Hebron, and it existed until the massacre. And Jews took refuge in Beit Hadassah, in the Hadassah Hospital. And one of their friends and neighbors, who was an Arab, pounded on the door that he was injured. Please let him in and help him. And instead, he let in a mob that killed many people and did other horrible things. And so this building, which belonged to the Jews, hadn't been lived in since 1929. And the women went with their children, 7 women, 54 children, and they went into the back of the hospital, and they put ladders and they climbed in, and when they all were inside and they couldn't keep the children quiet anymore, they started singing. And that's when the Israeli government found out that these women had entered this building. They lived in this building. I think I've talked about it before in terms of Sarah Nakshan. They lived in this building for 1 full year. In the beginning, there were no windows. The building had dead animals, and one could only imagine what was in this building. And water had to be carried from a well that was down the street. The soldiers that were guarding the place were not allowed to help them carry these heavy cans of water. And it's a very long, intricate story, but at the end of the year, the Israeli government agreed to reopen and allow re-establishment of property that was Jewish property. And so that's when Miriam Levinger began to live inside the city of Hebron. So she was a real heroine. She stood up for Israel. She protected Israel. And this is the week of her Shiva, and really her soul, I'm sure, she's protesting. She's bringing Mashiach. Nobody should worry. So I said before, how is everybody's Yom Kippur? I hope that it was meaningful for everybody, and it's a very interesting time right now that we're entering, because we're entering into what's called Zman Simchasenu, the season of our rejoicing. If you can't be happy now, come on, you got to get with it. And it's so interesting because I saw a video today. There's a man, his name, we call him Guru Gil, but his name is Gutman Locks. And if you go on Chabad.org, I don't know the name, it's a 3-minute clip with his name, Be Happy on Sukkot, because that's the mitzvah of the day, is to be happy on Sukkot. And he's standing by the kotel, and he has a lulav and esrog, and he's talking about the mitzvah, how beautiful it is, and I'm going to go into explaining what the lulav and esrog is and what the deeper meaning of it is. And he's saying, it's the mitzvah, be happy. And then you see somebody start to do the mitzvah, the shaking of the lulav and esrog, but he doesn't have a smile on his face. And he goes over to him and he says, you need to smile. And the whole 3 minutes is him going to people saying, the commandment of the day is to be happy. You have to be happy. And it's so beautiful because you see all these people who are serious, like knock it off mitzvah people really get the joy of it. So this is the time we bring in joy, the time to be joyous. So I just want to start off with some words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he says that Sukkot is related to Yom Kippur, and in the teachings for today, we're going to see how. It says it's discussed at length in the Zohar, which is the book of mysticism that was compiled by Shimon Bar Yochai, and Kabbalah, that the Sukkah encompasses. You go into the Sukkah, and I'm going to explain in detail for anybody who might be unfamiliar with the concept. And it encompasses and it provides shade. And where does this come from? What is the covering of the Sukkah, the Schach, which is the most important part of the Sukkah? It's related to the cloud of incense. So remember, we learned last week that when the Kohen Gadol goes into the Holy of Holies, and he does the incense offering. So one of the ingredients was called malei ashan. It was the smoke-producing herb that had the fragrance of the incense, meaning the elevation of the physical world to its highest level, rise upward. And it says that these clouds of incense covered everything in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, but it was only visible in the Holy of Holies, which was the holiest place in the universe, in the dimension of space. And this incense that was hidden, because it was within the Holy of Holies, it was hidden on Yom Kippur, but it's in a revealed state on Sukkot when we build a sukkah. And the meaning of the word sukkah means covering, which is visible for all, because it stands on the outside. It's not within somebody's private dwelling. And that's why it's very important to have sukkahs that are publicly available for people, that people could see, and that people could even go into. I know that in Israel and in Brooklyn, there are signs on people's sukkahs that are on their front porches. Please come in. There's always cake. There's always something for people to make a blessing there. And I will be having a sukkah, and if anybody is around and wants to email me, so we only have like one person at a time when it's not the yontiv, please be in touch. So it says that when you have a sukkah in a public place that can be seen, the Rebbe is going on, even non-Jews will see it and walk past it, and they will notice it, and they will see that it's covering and protecting the Jews on all sides. And when the non-Jew asks, what is this? Why aren't you in it in the summer or in the spring, which we will go into, because Sukkot is really connected, and we're going to study it in a piece of Torah that a little more minutes down the line, but just to say that it's connected to Passover, because when we went out of Egypt, we dwelt for 40 years in the desert, and the clouds of glory, which we will explain, protected us during that time. So that you would think that, well, maybe that would be the time that you would dwell in the sukkah, but it says no, it's not in the spring and it's not in the summer. When is the time that one dwells in the sukkah? It's after the harvest season, when everybody's storehouses are full and there's plenty, and the weather starts to get cold. In Israel, now it's hot because it's unseasonably hot, but there are times that the weather goes from really hot of summer and becomes cold, and sometimes it's even raining. So it says that we're going into a holy space, and this holy space, which was represented by the clouds of glory, sheltered the Jews in the desert from the sun and many other things. And we are reminded of it every year, and we want to internalize it. We want to internalize the concept of sukkah, because all of these things can't remain intellectual. We have to bring them into our hearts and souls. So we want to bring that to our head and to our heart and to our feet and even to our shoes. Everything is encompassed by the sukkah. And it says, and the sukkah has the ability to illuminate the world like the clouds of glory did. And we're revealing God's presence. And how are we revealing God's presence? We're going to find out. We're going to take the lulav and the esrog and the other species, and this will be one of the ways we're going to reveal God's presence in the world. So it's taught that there's a midrash that says when we have a court case, how do you know who is victorious? It says the one who walks out with a stick held upright. I don't know why, but that's in a midrash. So it says, yep, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we have a court case. We're coming before God. We're giving an accounting. We're giving a reckoning. And how do we know we were victorious? Because it comes to the holiday of Sukkot. And we walk out with a lulav and an esrog. And the secret of these 4 species that is talked about in the book of Leviticus, where it says, on the first day of the holiday of Sukkot, take to yourself a beautiful fruit, etc. And we're going to actually explain what this means. So it says that the whole month of Tishrei, which we're still in, today is the 12th day of Tishrei. Today was the 12th of Tishrei. Tonight is the 13th of Tishrei. That has a comprehensive significance because there are very distinctive mitzvahs being commandments that are connected to this time period. So we have the mitzvah of what we call the lulav and the esrog, and I'm going to explain it, which symbolizes the intrinsic unity of the Jewish people. So to fulfill this mitzvah, we hold together 4 different species of trees. From the date palm, we take the lulav, the myrtle or the hadass, the willow called the aravos, and the citron, which is the esrog. So these 4 species are very different from each other. The esrog, which looks like a lemon but is not, has a pleasant taste and a pleasant fragrance. The fruit of the tree, the date tree from which the lulav is taken, has a pleasant taste but no fragrance. The myrtle has a pleasant fragrance but no taste, and the willow has neither fragrance nor taste. Taste symbolizes Torah study because understanding Torah gives us a concrete pleasure, similar to the sensation of experiencing a pleasing flavor. Smell symbolizes the fulfillment of the mitzvot, the commandments, because the quality which usually motivates us to fulfill the mitzvahs is what we call Kabbalas ol. Kabbalas ol is unquestioning acceptance of the yoke of heaven. So you can picture an ox, 2 oxen, and they have a yoke around their necks. So they can't see to the right or the left. They can only see what's straight ahead of them, and they only go what's straight ahead of them. And that's what we call in accepting mitzvahs, Kabbalas ol, going forward with the mitzvahs. And we don't understand, it says that we don't understand the reasons for the mitzvahs. We might think we do, but it says we don't even know what is an important mitzvah, most important, and what's less important, because we don't know what the reasons are. So their practice might be less gratifying. It's similar to, like, if you smell a really good chocolate cake. It's not the same as if you get to eat that chocolate cake, okay? So each of the 4 species represents a different type of person. The esrog represents a person who studies Torah and practices mitzvahs. The lulav is a person who studies Torah but does not do mitzvahs. The myrtle is somebody who does mitzvahs but doesn't study Torah. And the willow is a Jew who neither studies Torah nor observes mitzvahs. So we know that the mitzvah of the lulav and the esrog demonstrates that no person can attain fulfillment or unity unless they will go beyond themselves and join with another person or other persons. So it says that even the esrog, which symbolizes that person that studies Torah and that does the mitzvahs, even that can't if they don't have the humble willow in their hand also, and the lulav and the myrtle, they can't perform that mitzvah, that commandment. And it says that no matter how much we develop as individuals, we cannot reach our true potential with the help of others. This concept of unity from one to another is the essential ingredient in understanding this mitzvah. And I once had this wonderful woman, her name is Marjorie, and her gift to the world was helping. She was not Jewish, but her gift to the world was helping Jewish women make their homes beautiful and their environment beautiful and their shuls and Chabad houses beautiful. And she was helping me beautify my home and put things in order. And I said to her one day, I said, "Oh, Marjorie, thank you so much." I said, I have tried for like 20 years and I never could do this. And she said, "Of course not." She said, "No one can do it alone." And it was like such a teaching, such an insight that you know, we need each other. And to develop our potential fully, we need to rely on each other. And we this is an ingredient, and we learn this from taking these four species together, the lulav and the esrog. And this concept of unity is essential to this mitzvah. And it says that it's not only that we bind them together, but what their individual characteristics are. So it says a lulav can be used in this mitzvah only if its leaves are bound together. The only species of myrtle that can be used for the mitzvah is that which has a successive row of 3 leaves each. And in each row, the leaves have to be level with each other, not one significantly higher or lower than the other. And the willow also expresses the concept of unity because it grows in bunches. So also this concept of unity is in the esrog. Why? Because it says that it grows on a tree for an entire calendar year, and it's exposed to every season, all the variations of all the different seasons and changes of climate. And not does it only withstand all these influences, but it responds positively. Each of the different seasons contributes to the growth of the esrog. So from the esrog, we learn the teaching of not just to tolerate people of all different kinds, even especially those with personalities or characteristics that are different from ours, but to grow through contact with other people. The Mishnah asks, who is wise? And it says, one who learns from every person. So these expressions of unity on Sukkot have to do, are related to the holiday that comes before it, which were Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But there's a difference in approach to the unity of Sukkot and the unity of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. During the days of awe, which is what Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are called, the awareness experiences. When you don't see me, somebody's calling me because I haven't yet mastered my computer. But I always threaten that this week I'm going to master it in order to do the Facebook on my computer. So I'm not going away, I'm just clicking off the person. So on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we step behind our personal selves and we establish a contact with the godly spark that's in our soul. and all the godly sparks are united as one. Like our godly souls are one. That's why sometimes you'll meet a person and you'll feel so drawn to them. You'll have such a connection because we do have a oneness. And wouldn't that be beautiful if we could look at everybody in that way? You know, look for that place where we are one. And sometimes it can be a challenge, but we can do it. We can do it. And it says, at the level of soul, there is no separation that exists between a person and God. And there's no difference on that level of soul between one Jew and another. And on Rosh Hashanah, on Yom Kippur, we prayed together collectively. And that's why on Yom Kippur, when we do the Al Chetz, when we do we have sinned, everything is in the we. It's in the we, it's in the collective. So, but even though there's a oneness and there's a unity, there is a drawback. Because it says the unity that we feel in the days of awe comes from like a spiritual uplift, something that's beyond our ordinary experience. You know, like you feel a difference in the air. You feel, you know, you lift yourself up in a certain way. And then the holidays pass and we're our same old selves. Yeah, well, here we are again. And we could feel separate from each other. You know, we could have a feeling of separation. And Sukkot teaches us that we have to remain united, even at the level where a person's individual identity is different. One person is an esrog, one is a willow, one is a lulav, and these differences exist, but we stand united together in a collective entity. And it says that the sequence the holidays come in are very important, that the days of awe and that awareness of unity prepares us for the lessons of unity that are taught on Sukkot. And it goes on to say that this progression of deeper unity reaches its peak on Simchas Torah, which we will talk about next week in class. And Simchas Torah happens to be my father's yahrzeit, so I'm even more doubly attached to Simchas Torah. And it says at that time, everybody comes together as one. But we'll go into that at next week. And it says, but Sukkot teaches us that we stand together as unified people. So it says through being together, there can be a blessing and we rejoice. And we take this lulav and esrog and myrtle and willow, and they're bound together, and we say a blessing, and we shake them in 6 directions and 4 corners of the world. And before I go into what the directions are, I just want to say that I was very blessed to have many wonderful encounters and experiences with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And one of the things that the Lubavitcher Rebbe cried, begged, spoke about all the time was Ahavas Yisrael, of having love and unity one to the other. Each of us, it's our responsibility and it's our commitment to do that in our lives, and to make sure that happens. And so the Lubavitcher Rebbe lived in Brooklyn, New York, and he was in a synagogue called 770. And 770 was very, very big. And there were 2 sides for the women's section. The women's section was in a balcony, and there were 2 sides. So there was a side where you could see into the shul higher up and more at a distance. And then there was a very small side that was right above the Rebbe. And just really through kindness and my dear friend Miriam Rhodes, who many people know, she used to make me go at 6 in the morning when services started at 10, so we could be sitting in the front row right above the Rebbe. And I really had the privilege of seeing the Rebbe when it came the part in the Hallel service where the lulav and esrog was shook in all 6, taken in all 6 directions, to watch the Rebbe do it. And the Rebbe would hold the lulav and esrog in his hand. I don't know if you can see my hands. And he would move it, it's supposed to give a shake, and then he would bring it back to his heart. And then he would do the next direction and bring it into his heart with very slow, deliberate movements. And then the front and up and down and back. We'll go into the different directions and each time bring it into his heart. And when I stood there above the Rebbe and I saw him move this lulav and esrog in all these directions, I just felt like he was drawing in the whole entire world, like everyone to the south, the world, the population to the south was drawn to his heart, and to the north was drawn to his heart, and to the east and to the west were all drawn back into his heart. And it was a very powerful experience. And that is the way we bless the lulav and esrog, that we do it. Bring it into your heart. You want to have a visualization. You want to have contemplation. You want to be conscious and alert when we do this commandment. So it says that we shake in all the directions. So when we shake the lulav and the four species to the south, it represents heat. So it says that when Jews are united, that passions of the world have no effect on us. If we can be united, we can hold strong in spirituality. When we bring the lulav, shake it to the north, and then bring it back to our hearts, it says coldness, it represents coldness, that all indifference and coldness in the world has no effect on us. And because if we are united, we warm each other up. So we don't want to become indifferent to people's needs and desires. And we also want to be sensitive and not cold to God and Torah. So the direction straightforward, which is the east, because we always face, we're in America, we face to the east. I know some of my friends from Israel are watching, so you face towards the Kotel, the Holy of Holies. But so when we do it straightforward and we're doing it to the east, it says no matter how bright the world is, we have a mission to make it brighter. Even though the sun comes up and rises every day and brings light, each day brings more light. The direction up is we have to reach higher. The deeper, we have to elevate and reach to the deeper mystical aspects of Torah. And then we go down to the lower levels of both where the whole world, Jews, non-Jews together, need to be inspired by the light of Torah and holiness and the mitzvahs, even those who are engaged in things that are not good. And then we go to the west, and that represents the divine presence we know rests in the west, and we have to become a partner with God. And we have to be doing God's work in the world. And when we are united, we can bring true healing to the world. I mean, it's such an amazing concept. Just saying the blessings on the lulav and the esrog. And every day, except for Shabbos, we say it every day. And I just want to tell a really beautiful story, that one of the things that the Lubavitcher Rebbe always ask people to do on holidays: no rest. You're not allowed to rest. You need to reach out to other Jews. So we lived in Westwood at the time, and my son Sholem Shaya, I don't know, maybe he was 12, I don't know how, maybe that age, and a group of people from our Chabad house would go to UCLA Hospital. We were right across the street from UCLA Hospital. And in those days, you could go into the hospital. They would actually let you go from room to room looking for the Jews. You know, you didn't have to hide or sneak in. You know, they were so happy to see you. And they went from room to room looking for different Jewish people that especially people who are not well, to give them the opportunity to say the blessing on the lulav and esrog. So they went into, they would go into the room and they would ask, are you Jewish? And if the person wasn't, they would say, oh, we're here, it's a special holiday and we're here to do the commandments, whatever, and thank you very much. So they went into this one girl's room and they said, are you Jewish? And she said, no, I'm not. And they said, oh, it's a Jewish holiday and we're here to do whatever, and thank you very much. And they left. However, this girl was Jewish. And she was in the hospital for not her first suicide attempt. She had a very difficult living situation. And when she got home, it bothered her. She never really did anything Jewish in her life, but it actually bothered her that she had said that she wasn't Jewish. And that, they were such nice people, and she had just no, I'm not, and didn't welcome them in. So it bothered her so much that she decided that she would call the local, she lived in the valley, way out in the valley, I can't remember the town, I remember who the rabbi is. He was Rabbi Pascal, and it was a conservative synagogue that she called. And she asked for that she would like to start learning something about Judaism. And he said, how old are you? And she told him her age. And he said, you know what? We don't really have something here for you, but my daughter goes to a group in Westwood, in Westwood, and maybe you can get in touch. I'll have my daughter get in touch with you, and maybe you could go with her to this apartment of girls that is connected to, Westwood and the Chabad, and maybe you could go with them. And so this rabbi's daughter called her and made arrangements for her to come for Shabbos to Westwood. And she walks into the apartment, and it was the apartment of a friend of ours. Her name was Marcia, and she ran a girls' apartment for the Westwood Chabad. And she walks in, and it was Marcia, who had been the person who had come into her room, who had asked her to do the blessing on the lulav and esrog. So the end of the story is she lives somewhere in the valley. She has 6 kids, and she lives an observant life. So, so today it's very difficult. We're very restricted in terms of reaching out to other people, asking people to do a mitzvah, your neighbors, whatever. But if you have the opportunity, you don't know what kind of worlds can be changed by this. Okay, so to continue, we have a lot of different pieces of things to learn. So the unique advantage of the mitzvah, of the commandment, we're going to go now into the sukkah. We're going to leave behind the lulav and esrog and the 12 and the different species, and now we're going to go into the sukkah. And so it's the unique advantage of dwelling in this sukkah applies to all the days. So when you do the blessing of the lulav and esrog, you do it every day except Shabbos, and you say the blessing once a day, and that's it. But it says to dwell in the sukkah applies every moment of the holiday. And it begins, and here's the beautiful part. There are so many beautiful parts. It begins not only with the first moment of the holiness of the festival, but you need to prepare. I'm always saying prepare, but this time you really need to prepare before the festival. You must build your sukkah. So there is very specific specifications for the sukkah, and we're going to talk about how many walls and what the walls mean later on in the class. But it says you shall make the sukkah, and this cannot be done on the Yom Tov. It can't be done on the holiday. It has to be done first. Everything has to be done beforehand, and the making of the sukkah constitutes a mitzvah. And it's interesting because it says that we're going to come to learn it, but I'm going to give you a preview right now. That it says that the days right after Yom Kippur, that you should be occupied all the days that we're kind of sin-free, because we're supposed to be occupied, very busy building the sukkah and putting the lulav and esrog together and making the preparations for Zman Simchasenu, this season of our rejoicing. So the mitzvah to dwell in the sukkah says you shall dwell in the same way that you live ordinarily. So the mitzvah starts uninterrupted until the end of the festival. So we bring our lives into the sukkah, and we're going to give many examples of that. And it has many advantages, because it says every mitzvah in one way or the other only affects, it either affects, one's arm maybe with tefillin, one's mouth in terms of blowing of the shofar, whatever it is, but it doesn't involve the totality of the person. The mitzvah of the sukkah involves the totality of the person. You, your whole being, your whole body, walk into the sukkah. And what you do in the sukkah is everything. So the same things that a week before you didn't do in the sukkah, now it becomes a mitzvah. Once you do it in the sukkah, it actually transforms into a mitzvah. And it goes on to say something very interesting. It says, one who does not have a dwelling place is not called a person. It's a terrible thing not to have a place to dwell, not to have a home. And it says there's something that's missing from the wholeness of the person, because a person needs a dwelling to live in. Now, when you're traveling on the road, but you have a dwelling place, that's still your dwelling place. But on Sukkot, it says there's this mitzvah, you shall dwell in a temporary hut, so to speak, in the same manner that you live in ordinarily for the 7 days of the festival. So it says even when you're not in the sukkah, it is your dwelling place. So you're still always bound up with that mitzvah of the sukkah. And if you don't have a sukkah and you want a sukkah, you can go on the internet. So many people sell sukkahs. They sell little pop-up sukkahs. Our family, we used to go to a friend in Palm Springs for a day or two during the intermediate days of the sukkah, and you can't eat out of the sukkah. And some people are more strict than others. Our family was very strict about it. So we got what's called a pop-up sukkah. So it's like, you pop it up and you put the slack on top, and like one person at a time can fit inside it. So there are many opportunities to have a sukkah. And it says that the month of Tishrei, as we said before, is a comprehensive month for the whole year. And all the mitzvahs of the month, all the commandments of the month are a guidance for our spiritual work for the year. And it says about Sukkot that we are told, acknowledge God in all your ways. Everything in our life has to be bound up with God. Not only do we serve God through prayer and Torah study, but even when we're involved in the mundane, even when you're on your iPhone, do it in the sukkah. So the mundane involvements are bound up with God. And it's real. It's beautiful. I can't even begin to really share with you how beautiful it is to have a sukkah and to dwell in it. So here's something very interesting. It says the festival of Sukkot comes after the 10 days of Tshuva. So it says all the effects that we've achieved during the 10 days of Tshuva come on Sukkot in the mode of joy, simcha. I just want to say something about joy, because a lot of people, many people might not have a natural tendency to joy, and many people might think of all the reasons why they shouldn't be in joy. But one of the things we learned from Tanya is that a Jew is able to contain within their heart joy in one part of their heart and weeping in the other. So if things are difficult, or one has reason that there's really weeping in their heart, they can also have joy simultaneously. They don't have to have one or the other. Our hearts can contain both joy and weeping. And we know that when we are told it's a time for joy, then we have to find the way to attach to it. And that joy, it says, Simcha poretz geda. Joy will push away darkness. It will push away the boundaries. So that if it's time to go to a wedding, a simcha, and you move yourself to be joyous for the people. The time of Sukkot, it's the time of joy. Move oneself, find the way to move yourself to be full of joy, because that joy will spread throughout your whole entire year. So it says that, so this joy comes together on Sukkot. So this is very interesting. So the 10 days of Tshuva include the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, the day of Yom Kippur, and the 7 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and all of these days are connected to Sukkot. The Hebrew word for schach, which is the covering at the top of the sukkah, we call it schach. So it consists of 3 letters, a samak, a kaf, and another kaf. So these letters relate to samak is numerically 60. So there are 60 blowings on the shofar of the sound of tekiah, 60 blowings. The kaf is a 20, and that relates to the shvarim. There are 20 blowings of shvarim, and the second kaf, 20 blowings of trua, of the 100 blowings of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Isn't that a great fact to know? And it says, so we have the 60, we have schach, samak, chaf, chaf. The samak is 60 blowings of tekiah. The first 20 is the 20 blowings of shavarim, and the second 20 are the blowings of trua. So we see that the shofar is related to the sukkah. And in Yom Kippur, it says the principal part of the avoda, service of Yom Kippur, we spoke about it a little earlier, is the cloud of incense. And it says the cloud of incense affects the clouds of glory, which are signified by the sukkah. And we're going to go a little more into the clouds of glory, but we just spoke about it a little. And the 7 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur represent the 7 days of the week: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And it says the Sunday of all of this week is to correct all the Sundays of the year, and the Mondays, the Mondays. So we want to bring joy into each of these days of the week, that the seriousness of the 7 days that we do tshuva between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that seriousness transforms now to joy. And we bring that joy into Sukkah, and we bring joy into each day of the coming year, because we have an obligation to be filled with joy. I mean, really, who wouldn't want to be filled with joy? Okay. So it says, in the desert we traveled after the holiday of Passover. The Jews we remember the Exodus. We left Egypt. And for 40 years, the Jews were surrounded by the clouds of glory. And the clouds of glory protected us, we were there, from the sun, from the arrows, from the snakes, from the scorpions. It was also like a GPS that led the way. There was a fire that warmed. There are many, many things that the cloud washed our clothes. Wouldn't you want that now? So many things, and it was a miracle. So the sukkah has definitely the representation of what the clouds of glory were. So it says there are 3 basic concepts connected to sukkahs. There's the mitzvah of taking the 4 species that we talked about, to bless it and to shake it in 6 directions. There's the sitting in the sukkah that comes with its own blessings. And the third is that there was the bringing of 70 bullocks to the altar. Now, today, we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, we don't have a temple, we don't have an altar, but we read this section of Torah about the 70 bullocks, and through our reading, it's as if we are bringing them for a sacrifice. So it says, take to yourself, in the text, it says, in the Chumash, it says, take to yourself on the first day the 4 species and shake it in 6 directions. And why does it say the first day of the month? Because it's really the 15th of the month. So it says that is the first day for the calculations of sins for the new year. So on Yom Kippur, God forgives us. Then for the next 4 days, the next 4 days are related to the 4-letter name of God, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. And it says we're kind of sin-free during these days because we're occupied with making the sukkah and getting the ingredients for the lulav. So God says, I'm not counting any sins during these 4 days. Doesn't mean we should run out and sin, okay? But it says we're going to start the reckoning from the first of the day of when Sukkot begins. And that's why we say the first day, because it's the first day that our sins, hopefully we won't have any, are now again counted. So what is the connection? It says, we're talking about, the Midrash talks about a court case, and that we can tell from the person who won the court case, they come out with an upright stick. And we talked about this in the beginning of the class, that Rosh Hashanah is the time of judgment. And we come out with the lulav and the esrog in victory. We come out knowing that we're here for Sukkot. We come out with this stick, so to speak, the lulav victorious. And for 7 days, we are to sit in the sukkah. Now we bring these 70 bullocks to the altar, which represent the king of the animals, and it also represents the 70 nations of the world, which is really the most important factor in this. And we give energy and blessings to the nations of the world. And we bring them in the honor of the nations of the world. And it says that these 70 bullocks not only give blessing to the world, but they also refine the world. Like, our job in the world is to refine the world. That's why we're here. We're here for refinement. And we're refining the world not only for Jews, but for the non-Jews of the world, for everybody. We're in this together. And I think that, I mean, if it wasn't clear before the pandemic, it's clear now that the whole world is in this together. So it's very important, this whole understanding of giving energy and blessings to all the nations of the world. And we recite the Hallel prayers, the prayers of praise, that all nations of the world praise God, and will say that God showered the Jewish people with overwhelming kindness, and they will applaud. They will applaud God because of the refinement of these 70 bullocks. So why on Sukkot? Why is it a holiday of unity? Because it says that there's no hierarchy on Sukkot. We all go into a sukkah equally. We're all encompassed by the sukkah equally. We all bring the 4 species together equally in unity. So the sukkah doesn't have like a starting point or an end point. It surrounds us. It surrounds us with light, and we internalize this light by shaking the lulav and esrog. Even though you can shake it anywhere, you don't have to shake it inside a sukkah. But when you are in the sukkah, there's this quality of what we call encompassing light. And that also we know that if we're blessed by other people, that we say amen. Amen means it's true. And it's the unity, its numerical value is 91, which in Kabbalah represents the unity of 2 names of God. That we're bringing the name of God that's beyond time and space into time and space. And this becomes a reality, it says specifically when non-Jews give the blessing, that because we have to create a dwelling place for God on the earth and be a light to serve God and to be that light for all the nations of the world to serve God. And when a non-Jew gives a blessing, it says that she is making a dwelling place for God, because she's bringing beyond time and space into time and space. So it says that one of the Rebbes, the Rebbe Marash, who was the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, every day would go in another direction through the villages and to bring joy and to bring blessings, and that to bless people and they could bless him. And we also know in the story in the Haftarah that we read on Rosh Hashanah about Hannah and Elkanah, that when they would go to Shiloh to do the pilgrimage festivals, that Elkanah made sure always to take another direction, always to take another path to arouse people to praise God on that way. So we have a responsibility not only for our fellow Jews, but for the whole world. You know, it's very interesting because, as I told you in the story of this woman, where the Rebbe encouraged everybody on Sukkot to make sure that to go to hospitals, to go in the streets, go wherever you can, to do the mitzvah of lulav and esrog, that used to be, you know, you had to go out with a whole kit. You had to have you took candles with you, and you took blessings for pregnant women, and you were always looking for Jews to encourage them and inspire them to come closer to being their Jewish selves, really. And I know that we used to go on an airplane and used to just wish, you know, sometimes you're so tired, oh, I hope I don't sit next to a Jew, because maybe I can rest. And then the Rebbe came out with that we have to speak also to non-Jews. Non-Jews are obligated to have the 7 mitzvahs of Noach. So wherever you will go, be a vessel, be an open vessel, you know. I know that, you know, when people stand on the corners, or you're in your car and people ask for money and you give them money and they say, God bless you. I don't know, it's so significant that I do feel the power of that somebody can say, God bless you. And we say that to other people also. So on Sukkot, we achieve this by bringing the 70 bullocks, and it comes after the 10 days of tshuva. And it says, I call God from the depths of my heart, not just from the outside level of my soul, which is the nefesh, the ruach, and neshama. Those are the 3. There are 5 levels to the soul. So the nefesh, ruach, and neshama are the 3 levels that are contained within, inside, but there's an inner depth, and the inner depth and the higher depth are what's called the chaya and yechida. These are the deepest levels, and the yechida is the oneness with God, and that's what the Ne'ilah service represents. It says the Ne'ilah service on Yom Kippur, you're locked in with that your yechida level and the yechida of God are locked in one together. So we've just come from this experience of becoming one with God. And we know that the service in the temple, in the Holy of Holies, the high priest became one with God. And today we are all like the high priest. We wear white clothing on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but it's still concealed. There's a concealment. When do the secrets come out? On the holiday of Sukkot. It's a holiday of joy. It's a holiday that brings revelation. Excuse me. It says, Simcha poratz geter, joy breaks through all barriers. And we sit in the sukkah, and we have the 4 species, and it all represents oneness and unity. And we become one with the nations of the world, and they will praise God because of this. And we're seeing miracles in terms of Israel in front of our eyes, and there are hardships, but we look to the positive. That's the Hasidic way to look. We look at, somebody recently said to me, oh, I'm not doing this. I said, no. We don't look that way. We look at what you are doing. That's the Hasidic way to look. We look forward. We look at what we are doing. Nobody's asking you for a list of what you're not doing. So it says the sukkah represented these clouds of glory that protected us from the heat, and we lacked nothing at that time, absolutely nothing. The night was warm from the clouds of glory. If it was a cold night, it battled the scorpions and snakes. It flattened the paths before us for walking, and so Sukkot comes sometimes at a not so comfortable time of year. I mean, I hate to say that here in California where the weather is beautiful, but I have been in other places. I know my friend Miriam Rhodes, who so many of you know and love, used to say, what's Amerikanische Mesiras Nefesh? So Mesiras Nefesh is self-sacrifice. Everybody can get what the word self-sacrifice is. So in Russia, where the Hasidim come from, where Lubavitch originated, in Russia, Jews used to give up their lives to sit in a sukkah. I mean, anything they did Jewish, their lives were at risk. And to eat in a sukkah not only was dangerous in the terms of the Russians and the government policies, but it could be snowing and cold, and people did everything in a sukkah. So Miriam used to say, what's Amerikanische Mesiras Nefesh? It's sitting in the sukkah in the rain. Because in New York and Crown Heights, we often sat in the sukkah in the rain. It would rain. And it's very interesting because in New York, they don't have those nice palm branches that we get in California. They have pine trees. And what happens with the pine trees? All the little pines and things fall, especially when it rains in your soup or whatever. And I remember once in California, they used to send to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, they used to send schach, these from the palm trees in California. And I was once going to New York for Sukkot, and I was given this huge box, long box filled with palm fronds to take to the Rebbe. And I remember I must have flown 500 airplane flights in my life or more. I mean, I've been flying a long time and to a lot of places. And the only flight I had that was the worst and the most horrible, and that that the plane was almost doing somersaults, was that plane that I had the schach for the Rebbe on. And I think I was the only person on the plane that was not scared, because I knew I'm doing this mitzvah. I'm making sure that the Rebbe is going to have schach that's not going to have pine leaves falling in his soup. But people sacrifice a lot to eat to be in a sukkah. It's huge. It's essential. You know, it's not some cute little booth that you have in your backyard, and but it's something very, very significant. We're giving ourselves physically over to God. We're giving our very essence over to God. We're giving ourselves over to God. And it says that in Messianic times, Me'etz Hashem, it should come immediately, soon, right away, like now. It says that the walls of the sukkah will be the skin of the Leviathan fish. So there's this fish, I'm not going into it really because I don't really understand it, so I'm not going into it, that will be eaten at the time of Mashiach. But it says the skin of that fish will be the walls of the sukkah. So it's interesting because it says that everything that comes out of water is pure and cannot receive impurity to it. So the skin of the fish is one with this skin that will be the walls of the sukkah will have a quality of being one with God. Why? Why is fish always pure? Because they're always connected to their source of life. They can't live out of water. An animal has to be shechted. It has to be elevated in a certain way. But the fish represents concealed worlds, being one with God. So it says that there's no separation between us and God. And why are there 7 days? Because it alludes to the 7 clouds of glory that protected us. So to go on a little, and it says, how can we do all of this? Through joy. So all of these mystical things, God from the higher worlds, this name of the encompassing light, going into the internal light, all of those things, you don't have to know all those details. All you have to know is it's the season of our rejoicing. Be filled with joy. So So Simcha, to have this indwelling of joy, is mentioned 3 times only by Sukkot. And we bring everything into the home. We bring all the blessings, prayers, and requests into our home, meaning it should not remain in the spiritual world. Like the holidays, we were very spiritual. We were, holy and spiritual, but it shouldn't remain there. It has to come into the physical. You want to take these blessings and you want them in your real life. You don't want to think about the blessings. You want to see the blessings revealed in front of you. And we do this not only with prayer, but we do this with the garments of our soul. So what are the garments of our soul? They're thought, speech, and action. So the entire year, first we have Passover, the holiday of Passover, and then we have the holiday of Shavuos, then we have the holiday of Sukkot, meaning the 3 pilgrimage festivals. And it says, and we're creating and we're mastering these garments of our soul. So for Sukkot, for all of the days of Sukkot, we eat in the Sukkah, we pray in the Sukkah, we talk on our cell phones in the Sukkah, we read in the Sukkah. Next week, hopefully my Wi-Fi will work perfectly outside and I will give the class in the Sukkah. I have a lot of light and hopefully it'll be as hot as it is today. So we bring all these blessings from Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and we bring it into our everyday life. So to continue, okay. Now, here is a teaching I actually just was listening to while I was having dinner from Y.Y. Jacobson. So I'm just going to give it over to you because I thought it was so interesting. And then I want to do a few more teachings, and then I have a wonderful Levi Yitzhak Barditchev story. So he's talking about the dynamics that people talk about the sukkah as being a hug. And he starts off and he says, he started off with actually a story about Shlomo Carlebach, which I will share with you because I had the privilege of being with Shlomo Carlebach a lot and learning with Shlomo Carlebach. And Shlomo Carlebach really was the person who really taught me what Hasidus was, the first person. After I had been studying in a different type of Jewish kind of yeshiva experience in Israel. That's for the Farbrengen one day. When we're all in person with Mashiach in Yerushalayim, I'll have a Farbrengen on all those stories. So the story he told, and Shlomo went to prisons. I don't know about in America. I actually went to prisons in America. For 15 years, I actually visited a woman's prison in America almost every 3 weeks. And but Shlomo went to prisons quite often in Israel. I'm assuming this story might have taken place in Israel, I know. So one of the things that Shlomo was, he was a hugger. He hugged people, and he went in the prison, and when he was leaving the prison, he hugged everybody in the prison. And there was this very burly, rough prisoner who said, can you hug me again? It said to him, could you come back here? Like in a gruff voice. And he said, yeah. And he said, can you hug me again? And Shlomo hugged him again. And then he said, can you hug me again? And he hugged him again. And he said, can you hug me again? And he said to Shlomo that nobody in my life ever hugged me. It's a very deep story because we know that without a hug and without touching, they've done studies in orphanages and in countries under war conditions where there are just babies that have never been touched and hugged and they weren't able to survive. So, we can hug now, which is actually very interesting because, I, in my Jewish practice, I don't touch men and I don't hug men. And hugging is very American and it's probably very European and it's very, so how do you convey warmth and friendship? I mean, because hugs often are just very superficial. You know, it's like a handshake could be very superficial, but for many people it takes a lot of significance. And I know that my husband also would not hug other women or shake their hand, and if somebody would be offended, he would say to them, well, the last woman that shook my hand had 12 of my children. And then they would all laugh. So we have to bring humor into it, but today we're not hugging. So I have the experience of not hugging, and face to face, and a lot of warmth and a smile and an open heart today can be in the place of a hug, because I don't know when people are going to be able to randomly hug each other. And my beautiful grandchildren, many of who are over today, I haven't hugged them since February, and they're already trained not to come to me and hug me, and that's kind of very sad in a certain way, because they're so delicious and squeezable. But as my granddaughter Nava says, when Corona's over, everything she says, when Corona's over. So hugging is expressing something very deep. So we're going to go into what the hug is. So it says that a sukkah represents a hug. It represents a big hug. So this is the teaching that Rabbi Jacobson is giving over. So he said, we asked the question, how many walls are there in a sukkah? So there are three different ways to understand what walls are. It can either be 4 walls, which would be a fully enclosed sukkah. It could be 3 walls, or it could be 2 walls and a little bit of a third wall. These are the dynamics of the sukkah. You can have 2 complete walls, and then you can have a third wall that's a handbreadth. So the minimum requirement of how high and how wide a sukkah is 40 inches in height is the minimal height, and 27 inches is the minimal width, and the third wall could even be 3 inches. So there's a rabbi, his name Rabbi Azulai, and he says there are 3 methods to build the sukkah. Again, one is with 4 walls, one with 3 walls, and one was these 2 complete walls and a little bit of another wall. But it says this teaching comes from the Arizal, and the Arizal is buried in Tzfat, and every summer I have had the privilege of taking my 5 a.m. walk to the Arizal every single morning for all the months I'm in Tzfat, and I didn't have it this year. So I'm very happy on Sukkot that I'm learning a teaching from the Holy Ari. So it says in the book of the Song of Songs that the bride says, his left arm is under my head and his right arm embraces me. So the left arm represents Gevurah and the days of awe. And it says, and after Yom Kippur, it says the right arm that embraces me represents love and kindness and giving, and that represents the sukkah. So the Arizal says that the sukkah is a divine embrace. Isn't that beautiful? The sukkah is a divine embrace. And it says from the end of Yom Kippur through the end of the days of Sukkot, it's all about the right arm embraces me, the loving kindness, that joy, that love. So it says when you have 2 complete walls and part of a third wall, that's what we're embracing with. So we embrace face to face with the right arm. So the arm is divided into 3 sections. There's the section from the shoulder to the elbow. There's the forearm from the elbow to the wrist, and then there's from the wrist to the end of the fingers. So it says, the Arizal says, when a person embraces another one that's standing in front of you, let's say like the husband and the wife, you embrace with your right arm. So when someone is embracing with their right arm, they're embracing the left side of the person opposite them. So the left waist is being embraced with the first section of the arm, from the shoulder to the elbow. And then with the forearm, they embrace the back. And these are the two complete walls of the sukkah. And the small third section begins when you embrace the right side of the face. That you stretch around, when you're stretching around the back, you come and you have a little bit of fingers that come to the right side of the face. And it says, the Arizal is saying the sukkah is the right arm embrace, and the minimal requirement, according to Kabbalah, is these two complete walls and this small third piece. So the Kabbalah is a metaphor of relationships. So the first wall embraces the left waist, the forearm encompasses the back, and the wrist and the fingers touch the face on the right side. So it says, what does this mean for us? It has to mean something for us. This is not just an intellectual exercise. What does this mean for us in the sukkah? How do we relate to it? So it says we relate to it by understanding love. There are 4 ways to express love. The first way is with words. The second way is with a kiss. The second way is with gazing. No, the second way is with a kiss. So words, there are power of words. You express your love. You say, I love you, however you want to express those words. The kiss is telling the person, I love you in a different way, more than the words could do. And the third way is the eyes. It says the eyes are like the eyes of a dove that can gaze for hours. But the fourth way is a hug, and a hug is an embrace. So it says that a hug is unique. It's very different from the 3 other ways of love. Because with the hug, you seize the person. When you hug the person, neither of you are going anywhere. I'm talking about a real hug, okay? So there's actually a soul quality to the hug, because there are 2 types of love. There's the reciprocal type of love and the unconditional type of love. So the reciprocal type of love is, what does your beloved add to your life? How does your beloved enrich your life? If you're here for me, I'm here for you, etc., etc. But the unconditional type of love is, I'm embracing your back, the place where there is no reciprocal effect. And I love you absolutely. It's a grip. I'm not letting you go. So the hug represents, you don't allow the person to be separated from you. When people pound, you know how people like to pound on your back as a hug? That is not a hug, okay? But when you hug, you melt away in the embrace. It's saying, I love you at your core. I love you in your essence, in your very essence. So love of God all year round. It says, God, we speak words of love, we gaze, we look, we kiss. It comes in different ways. It comes in achieving certain spiritual purifications, spiritual learning, etc., etc. But on Sukkot, it says, God is hugging us. So it says, during the year, the more you fine-tune yourself, the more you feel the light of God, then you feel God is kissing you. He's looking at your face. And we have this also from the holidays. So Passover is Pesach. The mouth speaks. So that's words. Shavuos is this bonding of God and the Jewish people through the Torah. It's like a kiss. And Rosh Hashanah is like a gaze. There's an awe of Rosh Hashanah. It's seeing. There's a lot of combinations of gematria and words that all equals seeing. But Sukkot is God is embracing us. And the mitzvah is doing whatever you do with your time, you do in the sukkah. You eat, you sleep, you drink, you snooze, you play cards, you read books to your children, you eat candy bars, whatever it is. But whatever you're doing in the sukkah is a mitzvah. That is the beauty of being in that hug from God. That it's a medium through which you can become connected to God. It's everything you do in the sukkah is sacred. On sukkahs, you're doing all your mundane things in the sukkah, and it's a mitzvah. And you're bound up in this intimate relationship with God. Meaning, I love you. God is saying, I love you at your core. I love your back. I love your mundane activities. And in the sukkah, it's a hug. It's all one. It's all a hug. So there are some pieces of scattered teachings that I wanted to do before we close, and I tell a wonderful Levi Yitzhak Barditchev story. So it says that the mitzvah of sukkah is unique in that it completely surrounds a person. So again, I want to repeat this because it's so profound that we can serve. You know, when you go to shul on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you know, you can also just have lip service. It could also be a time of lip service. You know, you're here, you're saying the prayers. It's something external. Maybe you feel elevated. Maybe you don't feel elevated. You wear your white clothes. You know, there's something about the momentum of the time. But then you have your real life. You have, you know, the things you do. You're preparing food, and you're eating food, and you're serving guests, and you're reading books, and you're learning, and you're studying, and you're talking on the phone. And so it says that what we're doing in the sukkah by performing these mundane acts in the sukkah is really fulfilling the connection of in all your ways know God. That's what it doesn't have to be that lofty. It doesn't have to be that you're sitting in a service and reading out of a prayer book. In all your ways know God. You know, it's very interesting. I've spoken about this before, and whoever doesn't take this meditation class is going to be missing out because they're starting a new series after the holidays, and this Rabbi Meir Sender from Succot is also starting a beginning series, and the website is Talorod, Talorod, and it's really quite extraordinary, and I really want to highly recommend meditation for everybody. It really, it's part of our Jewish tradition. It's part of really bringing down into our daily life, you know, this connection, our connection to God. And so one of the things this week is I've been in this meditation class. I mean, I've been meditating for years and years and years, and this is really quite extraordinary, these teachings based on Jewish texts and Jewish sources, and really beautifully. And somebody was giving an example of an ordinary experience they had in their life with their kablan in Hebrew. Their I don't know what kablan is. It's their worker person, their handyman that does everything in their house, that's fixing their house, and they had a fight. And he's Sephardic, and he ended up screaming at her, and it was this whole thing, and how she used these, and they've worked together for a year. Okay, this was not the norm of their relationship. Okay, and it bothered her very much because she went into Rosh Hashanah, and now she's going to go into Yom Kippur, and it's like weighing on her. And how she used these meditation techniques, the techniques that she learned, really in terms of bringing it down into her real life and making a change and a connection. So in the end, they both ended up just saying, I love you, with tears coming out of their eyes. You know, like, these things are not supposed to remain in the heavens. It's supposed to be in all your ways know him, to bring it into your life. And sukkah is an easy mitzvah. And I see somebody said they don't have a mitzvah to go the sukkah. Their shuls do have sukkahs, and I know that there will be sukkahs available for people. And if anybody during the week wants to get in touch with me to have a socially distanced, bite of honey cake, which I'm going to make in my sukkah, please get in touch with me. So it's a temporary dwelling. Why? Because the descent of the soul into a body is for a limited time. We're not going to live forever. I know some of us think we're going to live forever, but we're not going to live forever. So it's a temporary dwelling. And for 7 days, you go out of your permanent dwelling and you make your sukkah your permanent dwelling. There are many people that have a custom of sleeping in the sukkah. Different groups have different customs. But try to do, if you do have a sukkah at home, or you have access to a sukkah, or a neighbor who has a sukkah. Like I offered to my neighbors who all some of them want to be socially distanced and not, I said, you'll let me know when you want to come and you could be in my sukkah and nobody else can be there. I'll just put my yummy honey cake on the table and you can eat it. So it says there are 3 requirements for the materials of the sukkah, of the materials of the covering, the materials of the skak, that they grow from the earth originally, that they're no longer connected to the earth when used, and that they cannot become ritually impure. So that also it says, Chassidus explains that all spiritual light and revelation from the days of awe are drawn down again on Sukkot with joy and exuberance. I mean, it's a win-win situation, Sukkot. You actually can't go wrong. So it says that we have strength and this ability. We're going to draw from this for the coming year. Now, to be very honest, we all are going to need to draw joy for the year. Here's the opportunity. It's like there's buckets and buckets of joy being poured into the world during the time of Sukkot. We need to pack it up and keep it with us and unpack it when we need it during the year. Okay, so that it says that there are 3 types of attachment of the soul to God: the bond formed by the performance of a mitzvah, a commandment; the higher bond of tshuva; an essential bond which is higher than tshuva, which is expressed in the coronation of the king. And so it says that Rosh Hashanah is the king's coronation, Yom Kippur is a day of tshuva, and Sukkot, we are busy with the mitzvah of Sukkah. We're busy eating, we're busy drinking, we're busy, whatever we're doing, we're in that Sukkah. And it says that there's the joy just of the mitzvah. The joy of just being able to do the mitzvah. And it says that the repentance and the atonement of Yom Kippur is revealed on Sukkot. In the Zohar, we say there's a special teaching to invite the poor to the sukkah. So we're saying this is one who is poor in the mitzvah of Sukkot. It means that there are people who never heard of Sukkot. I actually have somebody who's in one of my writing classes, who's a Russian Jew, who, when I asked her last week if she ever heard of Yom Kippur, she said, maybe. She doesn't know. Sukkah, certainly not. So introduce people to this mitzvah. So it says a person's love comes from the depth of their heart. And it's super rational. Sometimes you have a super rational love, like a surrounding love. So imagine God having this surrounding love for us, for the Jewish people. So for not only for our souls, but also for our bodies. So the mitzvah sukkah, like we just said, it says his right hand embraces me, brings us close to God. God is hugging us, accompanying us. So it says that the Jews journeyed from Ramses towards Succot. Ramses means the evil has already melted and become nullified, for the Jews had already left the limitations the boundaries of Egypt. Mitzrayim comes from the word metzah, which means limitation or narrowness. After evil becomes nullified, because we know that the incense offering on Yom Kippur nullifies evil in the world, then God caused us to dwell in the Sukkah. And it says this is analogous like the birth of a child, because first the child is bathed and washed when it comes from the womb, which is equated to leaving Egypt. And then the child is wrapped in clean linen garments to guard them from dirt and from the outside. This is like dwelling in the sukkah. So it says that a sukkah whose shade does not exceed its sun is disqualified. What does that mean? Its sun, because you have your covering over you, but it shouldn't be so, you have to get like the right, it's like chillant, like when you move the pot on the fire and off the fire and you're testing it to see, is it good enough? It's like you have to look at the stock. Is there enough air and light coming in from the top that rain can fall through it, but it's not wide open, not too close, all those details. So it says its sun alludes to attachment to God, motivated by a feeling of the warmth of God's love. And this warmth intensifies your attachment. People, it says that when things are really going well, like now is the harvest season. So people come into their sukkah with their grapes, grape stores full, and their storehouses full, and life is good and everything's wonderful, and they might think, they might forget God. They might think life is great. But we can't forget God. This is the time of our fullness. This is after the harvest. This is after the hard work of the holiday seasons. So we need to also recognize shade. So it says the shade is a higher attachment, because we have to come to a place of self-nullification. We have to come to a place of knowing this is all from the hand of God. We did not do this. We create a vessel for blessings, but God is giving us the blessings. So we want to become close to God. And it says, the Baal Shem Tov said, my sukkah decorations, this is so beautiful, are simple Jews who serve God with the acceptance of the heavenly yoke. The divine joy they bring about mirrors their joy in doing a mitzvah, which comes from simple faith. And that is also what the willow represents. The willow, when we bring the species together, represents the Jew of simple faith. That's what the willow represents. So I want to conclude the class with telling a story from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev. And I just want to say that about 15 years ago, I had the privilege of being in the Ukraine, and my husband and I and went with Miriam Rhodes and Hannah Rachel Schusterman. We were attending a seminar at the grave of the Baal Shem Tov for 5 days with Rabbi Ginsburg in memory of my mother. And when that seminar was over, the four of us traveled to different graves of different rebbes in the Ukraine, just the four of us. And so we came to Barditchev, and we wanted to go to visit the grave of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev. And then there's a synagogue that wasn't his synagogue. I believe his synagogue was burned down, but it was one that he would pray in. And we were there praying the afternoon service. And a rabbi comes in and introduces himself and said he's the rabbi of Barditchev, and he's a Skvera Chassid. Skver, There are many different branches of Hasidim. Lubavitch is one, Satmar is the other, Karlin's another, and Skver is a branch. And there's a place outside of Monsey called New Skver, and there's a Rebbe there, and there are Hasidim there, and there are people there. And he was from New Skver, and he said that for maybe 40 years he's been coming, even when the years were very difficult, he's been coming to Barditchev, and he's been feeding the elderly poor, the Jews that have been left behind and the elderly poor. And he said he was an older man, probably was my age than I am now, but then he seemed like an older man. And he said his wife was not well, so she was in America. They would go back and forth. And he said to us, listen, it's, 3 hours back to Kiev where we were sleeping. Each night we would sleep in Kiev because there was, once we left Mezbot, where the Baal Shem Tov was, and we went to Hadej to visit the Alter Rebbe, and we went to Nezhin, and we went to Anapoli. Each night we had to go back to Kiev, so we were in a car maybe 8 hours a day because there was no place at that time that was safe to stay for Jews. So he said, so we were going to be driving now many hours in the car, and we had come many hours to get to Barditchev. And he said, why don't you let me feed you dinner. I have my housekeeper. She'll make you dinner, and you'll have dinner, and then you'll go back since it's such a long ride. So we thanked him very much, and we were having dinner. And as we're sitting there speaking to him, it's like my husband's book, I love when that happens. Okay, as we're sitting there speaking to him, he's talking about Skver and the community in this. My husband says, I have relatives that are Skver Hasidim. And he said, who? And my husband told him who his relatives are. And they were also his relatives. And that my husband was related, let's say, to the wife of the family, and he was related to the husband of the family. So the children they have together were our cousins in common. So that happened to us by the grave of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev. So here is the story. So, and I just want to say, because the story doesn't represent who Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev was, but he was always looking for the good. He only saw the good in Jews. So he said that it was very difficult for him to get an esrog, and he just didn't have one. And Sukkot was coming. The community built a big sukkah for everybody, but there was no esrog. He had no esrog. So he sent two of his Hasidim to the train station. And he said, wait there and look for a rich man. Look for somebody rich getting off the train and see if you can buy the esrog. Somehow you can get this esrog for him. So they saw a rich man, obviously a rich Jewish man, getting off the train, and he was holding a box, and they went up to him and they said, what's in the box? And he said an esrog, and they said, wow, we want to buy it. We'll pay you 10 times what you paid for it. And he said, no, I'm not selling it. I'm very rich. I don't need money. And he said, the Levi Yitzhak, the Rebbe, will bless you with children. He says, I have a lot of children. I don't need children. And then he says, he'll bless you with good health. He said, I have great health. I don't need great health. So he says, I have everything. So they said, okay, you have to come with us. We have to take you to the Rebbe. And they went to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev, and he said that I'm not selling it. I don't need money. I don't need children. I don't need good health. So Levi Yitzchak said to him, after 120 years, when you die and go to the higher worlds, he said, you will be together with me in my courtyard. How about that? If I take you with me into the higher world and we'll be together in my courtyard, will you give me sell me your esrog for that? He said, absolutely. And he gave him the esrog. And he said, and the man went home, and Rabbi Levi Yitzchak went home, and then he's thinking, you know what? I don't think this is worth it. He had second thoughts. And he said, he's going to nudge me, and I'll have to listen to him, and I'll have to deal with him for my whole entire life. And Gan Eden, forget it. I don't want it. I don't want this deal. So he told his Chassidim, two of them, to stand outside the sukkah. And after the services, when this rich man will come to enter the sukkah, he should tell him that he can't come in, that he can't come into the sukkah. Now, the commandments of sukkah for those who keep it in its most strict form is that you have nothing to eat or drink outside the sukkah for the whole 7 days of sukkahs. Absolutely nothing, okay? Some people might have water, many people don't have water, so they're not going to let him into the sukkah. So he comes to the sukkah and he wants to make kiddush, and the Hasidim say, "You can't come in." And he says, "What?" He says, "What do you mean I can't come in?" And he says, "The rabbi said you can't come in. You can't come in to make kiddush." So he says, "Where is he?" And he was still at home. He runs to the home and he says, "What is this? I need to make kiddush." And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says, "You know what? I made a mistake. I changed my mind. I made a mistake. I don't want this deal." So the man says to him, "Fine, I won't be with you. I give up being with you in your courtyard. You can have it back, but I need to get in the sukkah. I need to do the mitzvah of being in the sukkah and making kiddush and eating, of going into the sukkah." And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says, "Yes, that's what I was waiting for. I wanted to make sure that you were willing to do anything, to give up your place in God Eden, in the higher worlds, in order to do this mitzvah in the physical world today." And he said, "And because of that, you will be with me in my courtyard." And he went on to say, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, this is what Sukkot is about. That Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you go to shul, and you daven, and you sing, and you praise God. And yes, some of it is lip service. It's not so hard. Maybe it's hard to fast, but, to say the words, they're written in the book. You might have intention, you might not have intention. It doesn't take, your guts out of you. But it says on Sukkot, you have to move out of your house. And you might have a very beautiful house. And for the Jews that lived not only in Russia, but other places where their lives were in danger, and their health was in danger from the cold and the weather, to move out of their homes and to be all the time in the sukkah took a tremendous sacrifice from them. I mean, they didn't just say, like a rich man would, "Well, let somebody else do it. That's for them. It's not for me. I don't really want to do that. Let somebody else do it." No. It says you have to move out of your house. You have to move out of your environment. And sometimes it's cold and raining, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. And you want to stay in your warm place where you are. But it says you have to go into this simple sukkah to be connected with God. That is what God is asking of us. That it says, the higher world's paradise, services, it's good, it's holy, it's very nice. But there is nothing in the world as great as performing a physical mitzvah down here in this world. So the mitzvah of Sukkot it's Zman Simchasenu. We have to be filled with joy. That is the mitzvah that's being asked of us. So I'm going to say l'chaim on my water. I'm only on water. Where's my Shevachaya homemade cup with wine in it? And next week, when I'm in my sukkah giving the class, I will be saying l'chaim. So there'll be a class next week. Everybody should have a lot of joy. This sukkah, everyone should have healing. It should be filled with blessing. Whoever is watching that needs a healing should have a healing. We dedicated this class to Miriam Levinger. May she and all the holy, holy, holy women of Israel that are in the higher world storm the gates and bring Mashiach now. Okay, good night.